Welcome to the Rich Report, a podcast with news and information on high performance computing. Today, my guests are from Platform Computing. We have Ken Hertzler, who's VP of Product Management, and Scott Campbell, who's Director of Product Management for Enterprise Analytics. Well, Ken, why don't we just go right into it? And I understand you guys have some slides and an announcement to make today.
Okay, great. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes and really kind of give you a synopsis of the announcement that's coming out next Tuesday, and then I'll turn it over to Scott to give you more of the details about our solution that we're proposing. But focusing on slide 2 in that deck, just briefly, what we're seeing in the marketplace, as you know, Platform Computing has very powerful distributed computing workload schedulers, and when we see market conditions that are occurring that we believe we are in a good position to solve a problem, we are jumping at the opportunity. And one of the market conditions that we've been recently seeing is the changing landscape in analytics. With the advent of both structured and unstructured data, now evident within a large organizations, medium-sized organizations, the internet, the plethora of new data. But I think what has changed particularly is the fact that the unstructured data is becoming so prolific. It's no longer able to be structured in relational type of database formats, and so you have, just a large amount of unstructured data growing. And so, going to slide 3, that creates new problems that we believe, with products like what we have, could help solve some of the big issues related to this. So, unstructured data is growing. The usability of that data is not growing, because it's just so much of it, and it is not in an indexed format to extract it, that it's very difficult. So what's happened over even though the data's been accumulating the last 5+ years, only recently has there been programmatic models to actually start making use of that data. And that, of course, has encapsulated itself in the original technologies from Google, and then Apache. The Apache group turned it into a public domain source code. It's called MapReduce. Are you familiar with that, Rich?
I sure am, yeah.
Okay, great. So you know the story. But if you go to slide 4, the challenges with that type of solution are compatibility. There's multiple distributed storage architectures out there. It's not just HDFS. It's also GPFS. It's many other types of data formats. And if companies are really going to start using the MapReduce technology, they're going to want to deploy it in an organization where they get benefits like high availability, fast performance, make sure that they're utilizing their machines efficiently, and of course have the ability to scale. And the current programmatic model of MapReduce does not have any of these kinds of capabilities. It just is a brute force, programmatic model to perform the query. And we're all of a sudden thinking to ourselves here at Platform Computing, well, guess what? We have technology like Platform Symphony, for example, that can give you availability, performance, utilization, and scalability, and it has a workload management capability that we could implement, in a MapReduce type of functionality. So, that's kind of where we're going with this. And if you go to slide 5, we have actually been working with a number of our customers and asking them about this, and have validated the challenges that they're facing. And if you look at the alternatives that they have available, there is the open source Hadoop project. There is the commercial open source available projects, and Cloudera is one example of that. And then there's the in-database warehouse analytics. There's Greenplum that EMC acquired, Astra Data, and so forth. But again, they don't entirely solve the problems that I've indicated earlier. And so, in these particular alternative solutions, for example, or current solutions, customers are responsible for the stack. They require the internal expertise. If it's for the open source solutions, right now the open source Hadoop project and the commercial open source solutions only work with the HDFS distributed file system, and of course they have to provide and implement quality of service and performance tuning. So you can see what kind of position that we're in, and what I would like to do is have Scott introduce to you the solution of how we might integrate this type of technology using the platform tool set. So Scott, I'll let you take it over on slide 6.
All right, thank you very much. And as you're looking at slide 6, what you're really looking at is sort of how we're putting this together from an architecture perspective. And if you look in the middle where we have the MapReduce load management, that is really the target space where we can add tremendous value. It's really in the middleware space. And it does a couple of things that begin to address the problems that Ken was just talking about. Probably first and foremost is it opens up the architecture. So instead of having to choose a stack from top all the way through the file system, you have the ability now with this platform introduction to select, applications at one end that may be, from different types of vendors, and you may be able to select, for example, different file systems on the back end. And what we believe is there's going to be a tremendous amount of investment in this space. And so locking in right now with the technology can be somewhat dangerous in the sense that you would be, riding one horse that may or may not be the horse that turns out to be the best overall solution. So what we're bringing to the table is the ability for you to adapt and change over time because you're not locked in. So this open architecture message is very important to us. And then clearly, we're managing at an enterprise scale. So we're coming at this from a history of managing enterprise distributions. So it's high performance, it's high availability, it's managing multiple, something as what may sound simple, but something as trivial as multiple MapReduce jobs running in parallel is not trivial in the current release of the technology. With what we are introducing, that becomes just a standard offering. So what you end up with is this architecture that is proven from history because we're leveraging the architecture that's in some of the largest banks in the world, and it's opening up the architecture so that you're not tied, from one end to the other from a stack perspective. So if you go to the next slide, which is slide 7, you start to see how this sort of gets put together and why we're so confident that we can actually convey this message of an open architecture versus a very closed one. And the reason for that is that we're leveraging technology that's already in the market. It's the Symphony product. And we're on top of that, we are building out the infrastructure through APIs for the application space. And on the back end, it's connectors for the data space. So you have connectors to HDFS, for example. You could have it to other file systems. You could have it to databases so that you have the ability for mapping what may already exist in an environment. Because when you start thinking about resting data, that resting data may exist in a file system that's not HDFS. And if so, you don't necessarily want to have to migrate all that data just to be able to utilize it. So this is a way in which you can begin to attach to data sources. You can manage the front end in terms of the application layer because those tools are evolving very quickly and not be tied into a specific stack. So we have a tremendous amount of experience in this space and obviously believe that we're going to provide a tremendous amount of value when it comes to this middleware layer, which is really all about, the workload distribution and managing the stack from a high-performance computing perspective. So before I jump in, any questions on that part of the target and the aspect of what we're bringing to the market?
No, that makes sense. Would you characterize this as, is this a natural extension of your business model, trying to go after new customers, or is it something to you're adding for your existing customers, like for in the financial space?
So it's actually both. So obviously the low-hanging fruit is adding to the existing customers in the financial space. So that is obviously one of the vertical targets that we would go after. But because of the way we're doing this as more of an open architecture, more of a broad-based offering, we anticipate this to be both an extension to the existing customer base, but probably more importantly, a significant revenue generating opportunity for new growth. Because we do believe that there are other verticals that are very focused in this space that we haven't necessarily attached to yet, that we'll be able to as we move into this MapReduce logic.
Okay. And
so I see this as cool.
Yeah, and I mean, how would you characterize what they're doing today before you bring this capability into play? Are they just not managing this workload and just taking the peaks and valleys as they come?
So what's interesting about that is I've worked with a couple of customers who have that exact question sitting right in front of them, and their response to me is they're trying to figure out what they can throw away. Because in a case, what they're doing is they're actually using data, and they're trying to do more traditional management of the data with data warehousing or ETL type logic. But because the massive amount of data, they're really looking at today's workload is what do we actually throw away? In other words, we're not going to be able to get through all this data, so we're trying to be very selective. And so what we're seeing is a lot of initiatives to move to MapReduce as a way to start getting at more of the data, because quite honestly, a lot of it is just simply ignored. And you'll see this in the federal space, for example, where the data sets are just so large that until they get to a model that's more of a MapReduce type logic, they're basically ignoring a lot of that data today, which is one of the big problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that and say that MapReduce is really, I think, at a stage in the evolution of yep, it's accepted, and we believe it can be the solution to get at that data. But I think the industry hasn't really deployed it in mass yet. There are some isolated cases where it's being deployed and customers are running into this problem, which is why companies are trying to figure out how to solve and provide enterprise-class capabilities to a MapReduce implementation. So I think once that gets solved, I think there's going to be another ramp, and a lot of companies will quickly move to the MapReduce solution because it's been proven to be a very effective tool set to get at the data.
Okay.
So just to wrap up a little bit, if you go to slide 8, this really is talking about why we're in a position to do this, because it comes from years of history in workload management, in high performance computing, and really understanding the demands for enterprise type customers that are going to be put on a system where we can immediately add value with our history as well as with the tools that we already have in place. If you go to slide 9, this really talks about, from a technology perspective, where we are focused. And open architecture is clearly one of the messages that we are targeting, the ability for managing, a stack where we're in the middle, if you want to think of it as middleware in terms of managing the workflow and the work and the jobs associated with that, but opening up the application space and the actual storage space or data storage space. Support is obviously very important. We have a mature support model in place. We're managing some of the largest banks in the world, so we understand what mission critical actually means from a support perspective, and we can scale. So we can basically create an environment today that scales, and we're not having to reinvent this wheel from ground zero. We're basically extending our capabilities into the MapReduce workloads. As mentioned, we slide 10, we certainly have the experience to do this very effectively and believe, again, that we are in a very, very strong position, not only with our existing customers, as you mentioned, but also to target a market that is looking for this enterprise capability for MapReduce. And that's the other key message is we believe the adoption rate can become much faster if, in fact, some of the key holes have been filled around mission critical availability and the ability for managing lots of jobs simultaneously in parallel so that you can continuously run, on a 24/7 basis. And then lastly, you end up with what we call the enterprise class result, which is all of the aspects that you expect from, software, if you want to think of it that way, or processes that drive enterprise class opportunities. So things like scalability, the ability for managing it from a support perspective. Obviously, performance in this space is extremely important, which we can provide not only performance at an individual job level and increase the performance based on the technology, but the fact that you can have multiple jobs running in parallel, mean that your performance from a time a job is submitted, queued, run, completed, you're not going to be bottlenecked by one large job, for example, that you're waiting for. So from a performance perspective, it's not just the single job, but it's the mass of jobs that you start to measure. And then clearly, reliability, availability, and the manageability of the architecture is what I believe will start opening up opportunities into new enterprise, if you will, opportunities where customers may have been very reluctant to do it initially because the tool sets are still somewhat archaic, to customers who will actually take this leap and begin to move into this space from a MapReduce perspective. So any questions beyond what you've already talked about?
Yeah, just a question about your customer base that you're targeting. Are these folks pretty much self-identifying? They know they got the big data. They know MapReduce is a way to get it done, but they're just struggling with the right solution?
That's the first wave, I believe.
Yeah.
I believe that we have customers who have the problem. They're living and breathing it today, and they are very quickly shifting toward a MapReduce architecture, but looking for an enterprise class solution. That's wave number one.
Yeah.
I think wave two will be sort of move down the stack a little bit, where they may actually be managing the data today, but they're starting to see the horizon where the data is going to overrun them, and that would be more wave two, which is they're looking at solutions further out in time. But I think that they will be looking at wave one in terms of the adoption rate and the direction that they go.
Rich, our customers in Symphony are a lot of the investment banks in North America, Japan, as well as in Europe. And what we obviously have been talking with many of them already about supporting a MapReduce solution. And what we have found is that depending on the bank, the investment bank side of the firm, in some cases, are responsible also for managing large amounts of data, which may come from the retail side of the bank. And in other cases, we're getting introduced to the other side of the bank where they are managing a lot of the big data, such as moving from the investment bank group into the retail group, for example. So depending on the firm, our customers that we have had a long-time relationship with are, in fact, in some cases, the exact same people that are making the decisions on the MapReduce, and in other cases, we're being introduced so that they can have a common infrastructure for both their HPC investment bank risk analysis and also be able to run MapReduce on the same grid and have a shared infrastructure facility. So yes, specifically we are finding a lot of traction there. I just wanted to give you peel one of the layers of the onion off to give you a little bit more insight into that. But the other hand, I think as slide 10 indicates, we do have relationships with non-financial services customers that are also getting into managing big data and looking seriously at a MapReduce solution. And it's been no secret at Platform Computing that we have a very close relationship with SAS. We market, in fact, an OEM product of our technology through SAS. It's even advertised on our website that we do so. And of course, through the SAS relationship, there are lots of companies that are also into the analytics space using our workload distribution capability. So that's another angle as well, just to give you that insight.
Sure. And would cloud providers be one of your target audiences for this?
That is probably not on our top list. But because a lot of the cloud providers, or first of all, there's not very many of them, in the sense of quantity of enterprise companies, Fortune 2000 versus, a few dozen cloud providers. And we just don't see that as a short-term business model. We're really trying to go where the pain is first, and that's where the data is sitting. And usually that's at the customer side.
That makes sense, yeah. So one more question. To run this MapReduce kind of problem, would this be an opportunity for hardware vendors? Would they be buying new equipment to run this kind of thing, or is this managing existing hardware resources, do you think?
Well, I think it's going to be a combination. I think you'll see, especially in the initial deployments, it'll be new hardware opportunity. And then I think you'll see that, one of the values we bring to the table is being able to leverage that hardware and utilize it to, a much higher degree. So I think the initial onslaught will be, purchasing of hardware both, for existing as well as new MapReduce initiatives. And then I think you'll start to see more of the adoption of existing hardware as they can drive up utilization using this product.
Mm-hmm. Well, this sounds
I
really.
think it's really a matter of the fact that it's early adopter type logic,
Yeah.
where they buy everything and then begin to leverage that at a much higher level of utilization.
Yeah, this sounds really good, guys. How long has this been in the works?
Excellent.
How long has this been in the works?
It's been in the works really about 8 to 10 months now. We really saw the market beginning to be an opportunity last summer, and so you're seeing the culmination of a lot of work, kind of the startup type of orientation within the company.
Well, that sounds great. Well, hey, I want to thank you, Ken and Scott, for joining us on the Rich Report today. Stay tuned, folks, for more news and information on high-performance computing.